Welcome. This is the I lost track fifth part of this very condensed, down to the point, kind of focused series of cost estimate. So we covered in the previous parts. We covered what's cost estimate. We learned about how to adjust cost estimate for time and location, and we learned about rough order of magnitude estimates. In this video, we'll learn about the second part of doing detailed estimates. So the previous video will learn about labor cost. In this video, we'll learn about the other components of direct cost. So equipment, material, and subs. So this is what we covered last video, labor cost, and we'll cover equipment first, and then material, and then subcontractors. So equipment cost is from its name, you're covering the cost of the machines used and the activity you're analyzing or estimating. And equipment cost, to have an equipment working in this activity, either you own it or you rent it. So that's reflected in what we call the ownership cost. Either you rent it, lease it, or buy it. And then regardless of how you got the equipment, bought it or rented or leased it, you need to pay for its operation. So maintenance of it, the parts that you put. So imagine you have the car, any cost that you spend on the car after buying it is basically operation expense. So they use the principles of engineering economics to summarize all of that in a number that's dollar per hour. So we'll not get into that. There are references and websites, kind of like Blue Book, same idea of the cars Blue Book. There is a equipment Blue Book that does this. So analyze the life cycle of equipment and crunching a lot of numbers and give you at the end the hourly cost of equipment. Some contractors have dedicated software for that, especially heavy construction contractors, like those who are working in dams and roads and have a lot of heavy equipment. They spend money in software and technology to give them these numbers based on real life, real project data. So equipment cost estimate in detailed estimates, these are the steps. We'll go through them and you will find them similar to labor cost estimate, but actually it's much more simplified because you don't deal with a lot of overhead. So going with the same example we covered in the previous video for the labor estimate, and the equipment estimate will go with the same excavation activity here. From the previous video, we'll learn how to identify the line items. So we found it's line item 31, 23, 16.5, 0.50, 0500. And this line item corresponds to a crew called B33F, which includes equipment operators, half of labor, and we explained what does it mean, half labor. And this crew has two equipment, scrapers, and one scraper and this dozer. This is the page that shows this line item, and I see here this is the bare cost of the equipment. So for every bank cubic yard I move on this excavation activity, it costs 4.34 for the equipment within the crew. And remember, it's a bare cost, so I need to adjust that. I need to adjust for location and adjust for time if I'm using an older version of RSMeans. This is a San Jose project, so I look at the San Jose location and the line item is 31, so I'm looking for the division closest to that. So this is the row to it, and installation, labor, and equipment are the installation column here. And then we see here it's 100 value index, so I'm not adjusting actually anything. And I jump right away in adjusting the equipment hourly cost. Unlike the labor, I do a lot of worker comp overhead and total overhead factor calculations, weighted average. Here it's simple because labor bare cost includes such overhead in some way. The operation cost is kind of including that. So I'm just picking up mainly dependent on the city index here. The city index is the main thing that adjusting the cost here. So it's the same number I got from the line item. I have the quantity, multiply the quantity by the cost rate, unit cost, and I end up, this is the equipment cost for this activity. And that's it. It's much simpler compared to the labor cost. Labor, hiring laborers, managing them, estimating their costs is really a pain in the neck. Material cost is similar, so we'll see how to do that. So if you're a contractor buying directly material instead of your subs doing that, then you need to solicit material prices and buy them through purchase orders. So you can get the numbers directly from suppliers, but you can also get it from RSMeans. I mean, better to get the prices from suppliers, but for our course here, we're using RSMeans. Once you get the price of the material, dollar per linear foot, dollar per square foot, you account for the waste. So every material, from experience, people say, when I cut it on the side, I have this amount of waste, 5%, 10%, 1%, depending on the activity that you're doing, the material you're using. So typically it's a 5% waste percentage. And then you add the one thing here. So this is you can say the bare material cost. Here, sales tax can be included in the price that you are including for the material, or you wait until it's included in the total overhead cost or indirect cost of the project. So it's your choice, but you have to make sure that you're not double counting. So these are the steps of the material cost. We'll go over each one of these, and you see it's similar process to, especially the first couple of steps, similar to the labor and equipment. Here, for the same activity, excavation, but if we examine the line item that we identified from the previous steps for the labor and equipment, I see here blank for the material cost. So just pause a little, think. Why this activity has zero material cost? Because the activity is excavation activity. So I'm not using material to excavate, right? I'm just excavating, throwing soil, or moving it. So I'm not using new material. I'm not putting new material. So there is no material, there is no material cost. So it's an earthwork activity. So let's see another activity. So gypsum board. So you're building a gypsum board, installing gypsum board. So there is a material, you're putting material in place. So it's a gypsum board, sound damping panels. This thickness, multi-layer, lightweight, and no finish included. Meaning that no mudding, no painting. And it's in San Jose, and we're considering here, based on the locality we're in, we're using 7.25 material tax rate and 5% material waste. So if I look at this description, matching it to the different pages and RSMeans, this is the line item that matches closely to that. So it's line item 09, 29, 10.30, 60, 10. And now I can see here that the material cost is equal to $1.8 per watt. The unit here is square foot. So $1.8 per square foot. I need to adjust that for the city I'm in, so San Jose. San Jose, this is the page of California, and I'm looking at the line item is 0929. I look for the closest to that, so I pick this row here that represents plaster and gypsum board, and I'm looking at the material city index value. So it's 95.4, which is, if I multiply it to the rate I have, it will be 0.954. So this means that the gypsum board material, surprisingly, is less expensive than the national average. Probably because there is a lot of demand here, so price goes down. I'm not sure, but I was surprised. Something is cheaper in the Bay Area. So here we have the summary. So you see here it's much quicker also for the material compared to the labor. So this is the summary. I have the material waste is 5. I have 7.25 material tax. So just adjusting the bare cost here, $1.8 per square foot, while the city index, accounting for the waste, and accounting for the sales tax, this is now the adjusted material cost. If I have a 500 square foot, the scope of the material, so I'm calculate here the total material cost for this activity to be 965. So done with MLE, material, labor, equipment. The last part of the direct cost is the subcontractors. So when you sub work, this means that you're saying, I'm not doing it myself, I will hire someone or a company to do it for me as a GC. So you are a GC, you're hiring other companies to do work for you. Now, this is just a breakdown of an example breakdown of a project where you look at the scope of work and say, this is self-performed, this is subcontracted. So it depends on your company, what they can do in-house, what they can outsource or sub. So this is just an example. So let's say your company can do drywall, formwork, roofing. You can place concrete, you can do minor earthwork, you have a little excavator, different equipment, small ones you bought it, invest in buying them, and you use them, and you can also demolish. So you need to do a detailed estimate for this work: material, labor, equipment. But for all the other work that you're subcontracting, there are a long list of things that you will need expertise that you don't have in-house. So what to do with these, how to estimate the cost of these. And they are directly associated to different activities. So they are not direct costs like we'll see. They are not indirect costs. So how to estimate subcontracted work. So there are different ways. You can ask for proposals or quotes. So you send the scope of work statement. So write it very organized, concise, and send it to the subs, and they will send you quotes. But when you get quotes, they will come with different structures, different numbers, different way of handling the scope. Some people will drop even part of the scope because they can't do it, or they're so busy with other things. So you need what we need to do leveling of the bids. We need to look at the bids and try to make them apple to apple. So the lowest bid is not always the better, because maybe it's lowest because they dropped part of the scope you asked for. Pay attention to exclusions. So they have the exclusions written in the proposal or the quote, and look for similarities and differences. Try to really make sense of the numbers you have. So in the class, we'll do this exercise. We'll have here 3 proposals for flooring package, and we'll see which one would you recommend just by trying to level these proposals together. So we'll not do it in the video here. It's an exercise we'll do in the class. So the next here method is if you don't have the time to do quotes and requests for proposals to your subs, you really have 1 hour to submit the bid, then you can base your estimate on square foot estimate. So we learned about square foot, rough order of magnitude. You don't deal with the total square foot estimate or rate of the building as a whole, but you look for the detailed model and you look for values that you can use as square foot for different systems. So I can look at let's say the roofing. Instead of going for a roofing sub, I can look here and say it will cost around $4 per square foot, a square foot of the roof. So you have to pay attention to the unit here. The last way of doing that is you use the detailed RS means book, but remember in the detailed estimate we used to do the bare cost, material, labor, equipment. We will skip that because it's not self-performed work. We'll do the total including overhead and profit. So you will acknowledge these subs are doing work not for bare cost. They're doing it for their own overhead and profit, right? So you acknowledge that they are getting paid the cost and their own overhead and profit. You put this as a cost for you, as a subcontractor cost, and then you add on top of it your own overhead and profit. So this is what we'll see in the next video, how to add your overhead and profit, or what you call the markup. So this is the third way. So in summary here, you can either ask for quotes from the subs. If you don't have time, you can go by the square foot, or you can go by the total cost rate that includes overhead and profit. But in this case, you need to do some detailed quantity takeoff. Put your shoes in the sub and try to do some rough quantity takeoff calculation. So this page here, I will share it in the class that shows how this total, including overhead and profit, is calculated. It's assuming that, so RS means calculated assuming 10% overhead on the material, labor, and equipment. So that's the end of this lesson. We concluded here the direct cost of the bid price. So we covered in this video equipment, material, and subs. In the previous video, we covered the labor, so we cover all now parts of the direct cost. In the next video, we'll cover indirect cost and the markup for the bid price. So look to see you in the other video. Thanks for watching and take care.